I'm David Guralnick from the ICLW conference and Kaleidoscope Learning, and I'm here today with Tim Brock from the ROI Institute. Tim's one of our invited speakers at ICLW 2020, and we're very much looking forward to Tim's talk, which will cover ROI, and it's one of the things we're going to talk about today. So Tim, it's a pleasure to have you here. I'd like to start off maybe if you could talk a little bit about ROI, return on investment, but can you talk a little bit more about what that really means, and particularly in the context of learning and development and learning design?
Certainly. Well, ROI stands for return on investment, and it's a term that we've known for many, many years, but we've never really used it. I think one example could be is if you have children and you give them an allowance, you kind of expect something in return for that allowance, like doing their chores or something like that. So return on investment is simply when someone gives you something, you're looking to get something of value in return. And the same goes to what we do in the learning arena, particularly when we're dealing with any type of learning, whatever medium we had to be using. People give us money to produce some type of a result. And they would like to know that that result that they're getting in return is something of value in return for the investment that they're giving you. So what we've discovered around the globe is more and more organizations are expecting at the executive level to see what kind of value and monetary value that they're getting in return for the investments that they're making in learning and development programs to be able to justify continuing that funding versus looking for other places where they might get greater value out of it. So it's an important term that we in this field need to understand.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And can you tell me a little bit about when you're talking about value, you mentioned monetary value. Does it always have to be direct monetary value, and does it always have to be monetary value?
No, sometimes an intangible benefit can outweigh the monetary value of something. It's just doing the right thing. You know, for years ago, remember that we had that Tylenol scare in Chicago where, Johnson & Johnson decided to pull all of the Tylenol capsules off the shelves around the globe at great cost to them. But the most important thing to them at the time was their reputation. They said that, we will not give our customers, anything that will harm them. So they looked at the intangible of their reputation, their image, their brand as more important than the tangible money that they lost. So a lot of times, companies have to weigh those things. So if you have an intangible benefit and the leadership says, no, we're willing to take a loss in this. We know that we're not making money on it. We'll make it up elsewhere, but this is too important. So again, this is one of those decisions that the executives make, but they have to have the data, the monetary value and the tangibles so that they're able to make those informed decisions.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Are there also then within the monetary world, there are also indirect financial costs. So you might save X amount from doing something, but if you look down the line, you'll be able to at least project out some other benefit that's even a financial one that's not immediate. Is that something else that you take into account?
Oh, absolutely. One of the things that we can do is forecast an ROI as we look down the future. A lot of times executives, when they're making decisions of whether they should invest in something, is, well, what's the ROI forecast to be? What can we anticipate based on estimates that would give us an indication that this could be a proper investment? Now, anytime we do forecasts and estimates, we typically always come in high. We go in there understanding that we say, if we only make 50% of this ROI or 10% of it, it's still positive. So it gives them a little bit more of a warm fuzzy that, yeah, we're heading down the right path, and they have data to do that.
So when you do within the world of learning and learning development, so scoping within that world, when you're looking at projecting ROI for a company, what are the key factors you need to take into account and that you take into account?
Well, the key thing we're looking at for learning and development is, why does the learning program exist in the first place? We typically put a learning program in place because people have to learn how to do something to be able to do their jobs better. So we always want to start with the question of why. Why does management want to invest in this learning program or continue to invest in it? How is it helping the organization to achieve its organizational excellence goals? How is it helping to drive the business? And one of the things that we have to learn how to do is how to show that value to the executives using terms that they understand. And the terms that they understand are the ROI, the impact measures. If we can't show how our programs are impacting the organization to improve the performance of people, to improve organizational performance, then how do we justify continuing the program? And that's one of the things that we're going to be talking about in my session, is how we go about doing that. And we're going to look at an actual case study where they use an e-learning program to do that.
Are you ever brought in at a time where rather than having an existing program to evaluate, it's a program that they're considering putting together and you've got to look at it projecting out, is this going to be worth investing in from, kind of from the start?
Absolutely. Matter of fact, we prefer that. We want to include the evaluation and knowing what the payoff is and the impact that the executives want to see the program to increase. Ideally, by knowing that and defining what the why is, then we can come up with a feasible solution that's aligned to solve that business need, to improve those business measures. If we don't know what it is, what business measures they want to improve or sustain, then we're making things up when we design the program. So without knowing those business measures and the payoff that they're seeking, then we're kind of just grasping at straws out there and hoping that our program solves the problem. See, that's when our program becomes a faith-based learning program. We just tell them, just have faith in us, and we'll figure it out, and we'll give you something in return. Well, that's not going over too good nowadays, particularly in the current environment that we have out there. People are emerging from the COVID. They're making some very hard decisions justifying budget because a lot of cuts are coming. And if we can't demonstrate the impact and value that our programs are bringing to the organization, then that means that we're on a short list.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So what kind of factors do you use to help evaluate whether something's really going to improve performance? You've got something that's a program that has not been implemented yet. You're at the early stages where you want to be brought in. We're saying, okay, we want something that's going to improve performance of this particular audience. Is it going to be worth our while? So you, I guess, are going to both design a program to do that and justify why this is going to be worthwhile. So what are the factors that you use to help really in both? I assume you want to design something that is going to work and be effective, and you want to make sure that
Yes.
you have enough to justify that to the corporate audience who needs to really see something in order to make the investment.
Exactly. Well, the first thing we got to start off with is that they want to improve performance. What does that mean? So we have to kind of like peel the banana a little bit for them out there. Say, when you say improve performance, what are you trying to improve? Are you trying to improve quality? Are you trying to improve output, productivity? Are you trying to decrease or avoid costs? Are you trying to reduce the amount of time it takes something done out there? And then there's also some soft measures we want to look at. Do we want to improve what? You want to improve satisfaction of your customers or your employees? Do you want to improve your image? I mean, there's a lot. We have to really narrow in on what are the measures that they're looking at that tells them that they want to improve productivity, either because it's deficient or there's an opportunity to take it to a higher level. So we zero in on it specifically. What are those business measures that you're looking at that tells you this opportunity is here, so that we know how to design a program that's going to affect those measures.
And then, so from a process standpoint, we're trying to uncover what measures are actually important to the organization. I imagine sometimes they can come in and really tell you from the beginning, and sometimes it takes some effort to kind of work through it and figure out what really is the right thing to focus on. From a process standpoint, how does that typically work for you to get really get to the root of what's most critical?
Well, once you defined out what is the impact measures that they want to improve, then you go into what we call a performance analysis. We kind of sniff around and look within the organization and see, okay, what are the behaviors that are going on out there in the workplace that's affecting these impact measures? And it could be there's a process that's out of alignment that we need to take a look at and fix. It could be because they lack the tools or equipment, time. It could be the fact that we don't have the right incentive system in place. Why should people do this? They're not motivated to do it. There's no consequences of them not doing it that way. And then we also want to take a look at not only just what's happening within the organization, barriers that might be preventing them from performing to the level we want, but there's also things we got to take a look at within the individuals, their repertoire of behaviors out there. Do they have the knowledge and skills to do it? Do they have the capability to do it? And do they want to do it? Joe Harless, one of the creator of the front-end analysis, says typically what we do is whenever we're asked to do a task, we ask 4 questions. And one is, do I know what's expected of me? Okay, the second one is, can I do it? The third one is, will I be given the tools to do it? And the fourth one is, do I want to do it? So what we're doing during the performance analysis is we're going out there and we're trying to figure out what has to change in the workplace. What do people have to start doing, stop doing, or doing differently to change their workplace behavior so we can improve those business measures?
Yeah, no, that it certainly seems like it's a great approach. And do you then go out and talk to the target audience, the audience who would be most effective with that? Do you have time to do that as well?
Yes. We have different techniques for going out and collecting that data. You can do interviews, you can do focus groups, you can do questionnaires, surveys. There's a lot of different things that we can do out there that helps us to be able to just, uncover what the root causes are, so that we're not dealing with, the symptoms, but we're actually getting to the root cause.
What do you think helps you get? I know it varies a little bit by situation, but the most candid, honest information. So you've got an audience. You're already hired by by people in their corporate in their corporate world, so they kind of may know that you're coming in from the higher ups. How do you get? How do you go about getting candid responses so you can really get to that root? And really, the way to do that, I think, is for people to be honest with you about if they're going to tell you they like something, if they don't like, it's not really going to help you. So how do you really get to the bottom of what's really going on?
Well, the key thing is you got to have trust by the individuals out there. That's a corporate culture type of issue. But the other thing is when you're coming in and saying that we're trying to find out how we can make your life easier on the job. We're looking for anything out there that's preventing you from doing your job to the best of your abilities. The assumption is that when people go to work, they want to do a good job. And something usually interferes with that or changes their attitude, sours them for some reason. So it's something within the organization. So we want to find out what it is that prevents them from doing their jobs to the best of their ability, so that their life is easier, if you will. They're more productive. They're happier on the job. And it goes back to the with them, the what's in it for me. It's a situation where if you're coming in and you're telling me that you're going to make my work life easier, I'm going to be more inclined to be honest with you, with the stipulation that what I say is not going to be forwarded to management. We have a saying down here in Orlando where I'm at, what happens at Disney stays at Disney. So the idea is that there's non-attribution, so they feel free and safe to be able to share what they really want to do, because otherwise, if there's no trust, they're not going to tell you.
Yeah, absolutely. So how do you balance that with the corporate requests you're getting? Like, I imagine, I've consulted a number of companies. They, and dealt with this a little bit too. They like to know what you're hearing, but on the other hand, you have to feel that you provide this confidentiality to get honest answers, and you want to stick to that, and you absolutely, both ethically and for the purpose of the project, would need to do so. So how do you balance the needs of the target audience, which is most critical, with what the pressure that you might get elsewhere in the organization to do something with this data that you're collecting early on?
Good. Yeah, that's a great question, because what we use aggregate data. So we're not looking at what individuals are saying, as we're saying on a whole, this is what we're hearing from the organization. Because what our focus is not on people, what on individuals. Our focus is on how do we implement a program that's going to improve workforce performance, to improve organizational performance. And when we start coming in and zeroing in on individuals, then we've lost sight of what we're trying to do. The other thing we got to keep in mind is it's not our job in the learning and development field to evaluate people, individuals. That's the supervisor's job. We want to come in and find out what we can do to design a program, a learning program, that they're going to say, hey, this is great. This is the best thing since sliced bread. Why didn't somebody think of this before? This is really going to help me. And then when we evaluate it, we're evaluating the effectiveness of the program to improve those workplace behaviors, to improve those organizational results, to improve those business measures.
And so as you get into the design process, you get past the initial discussions, interviews, and data collection, you get into designing a program. How does that work from a process standpoint, both in terms of what you run by the corporate partner who's funding you, and also in terms of how you design something with an eye toward the evaluation that was going to happen, and kind of find the right balance of creativity and yet making sure you hit numbers? There's sort of a little bit of a tension there. I'm curious to know how that works through your processes.
Certainly. One of the things we stress is we have to continually engage the stakeholders out there. If we can't convince the executives that what we're going to do is going to help them to achieve their impact measures out there, they're not going to support it. The same way with the first line supervisors. If we're going into the workplace and we're talking to different people out there about making changes, we better involve those first line supervisors, or they're not going to support it. And if we go in there saying that what is it that we can do to help improve the performance of your workforce that's going to make you look better when you're reporting your productivity to the organization. If I'm a supervisor and you're saying that you're going to make my life easier, make me look better, how can I help? So when we're communicating to each of the stakeholders, we always want to do it within the framework of, we're here to help make you more productive, and to help you to achieve your goals and objectives so that you can maybe achieve some of your professional development goals. You're trying to get promoted or get noticed and those types of things. So we always got to come back to that with them, the what's in it for me. And the same thing with the stakeholders when we're out there interviewing individuals in the workplace. When we're talking to people out there, we have to be sure that they understand that we want to find out what is and is not really working. What is it that you have to be able to do your job better? And what is it that you would like to see removed by the organization that's preventing you from the job better? And they'll come back and say, if you can do that, I'll support you.
Absolutely. And then, so as you go through the process, are there key stages where you want to bring in the various stakeholders and make sure that you're on a track that's right for everybody? And if so, what are those stages?
The process is what we create is something we call a chain of value, and that's where the alignment comes in. So we want to start off with the executives. They're the ones who are going to fund it, and they're the ones who decide, okay, this is what we want to invest our money in. So the first thing they do is they decide, okay, is this an opportunity for us to achieve a positive payoff? If we invest our money in this initiative out there to improve these business measures, do we expect to receive something positive in return, a positive return? We don't want to invest money in something we're going to lose money on. We expect to see some type of return on it. That's where the return on investment comes in. Once we figure out what that is, then we go out into the workplace to figure out what has to change. We can't do that before we know what the business measures are, because we don't know what we're trying to figure out, what we're trying to improve. And once we figure out what has to change in the workplace, the next question we got to ask is, well, for people to change their behaviors, what do they have to learn? Even if we go out and we change a policy, they got to learn what changed in the policy and how it's going to affect them, or we change a process. So anytime something changed in the workforce, they have to learn about it. So it's just the degree, okay, on a spectrum of learning out there, how intense it's going to be. It could be informational, or it could go all the way down to, where they lack the knowledge and skills to do it, so we give them the knowledge and skills to build their capability, their confidence. And then we also want to make sure that we design the course in a way that everybody's going to react positively to it. Like I said earlier, we want everybody to say that, hey, this is the best thing since life. This is great. Everybody does this when they go to a course. Why am I here? This is not worth my time. I'm on vacation now. I'm going to get through this thing, but I'm not going to use it. We want people to say that this is helpful, this is relevant, this is useful. I'm going to use this when I get back to the job because I see how it's going to benefit me. And how do we get there? Because we went out in the workplace and we listened to them to find out what's bugging them, what's preventing them from doing their jobs, what is they have to help them. And then it's going to be relevant, relate to them and important to them because it came from them. It's not something we just made up.
Yep. That's right. And so when you design a program, is it always you mentioned courses? Is the outcome of what you design always necessarily a course?
No,
it
doesn't have to be a course. It could be something very simple as to having a meeting. If you want to inform people about something that's changed in the organization, sometimes what you can do is go out and you inform the supervisors, and then you say, okay, during your next staff meeting, I want you to brief your folks about this, and here's some handouts to give them.
So there are a lot of different ways to go. Sometimes it's simple, sometimes it's more complex. I imagine sometimes it might even be a process change or some sort of performance support or anything else that might really just address the issue and I guess in the budget that you're dealing with and help you make the appropriate ROI argument.
Exactly, because the cost of what you're doing goes into that ROI. So the more expensive program you have to solve it, that means it's going to be a more expense and a lower ROI. And one of the things we got to keep in mind is sometimes we're default to go to a training program or some type of extensive learning program. And something that I learned, an expression many years ago, I think it was Joe Harless again that said this. He said, inside every fat learning program is a skinny learning program screaming to get out. And sometimes all you have to do is give people a job aid. They're smart. Say, here's what we have to change. Let's walk through it. What questions do you have for me? Now go forth and, do it.
No, absolutely. And there's, the trend is finally, after a number of years moving, I think, away toward, monolithic courses being necessarily the way to go there. And which is, of course, a pleasure to finally see starting to take effect a little bit more as time goes on. So that's great to see. Let me ask you a little bit more then about the evaluation process. So, we've gone through some of the design and So when you get to evaluation, what does that process look like from your standpoint? What are you looking for, and what do you tend to do to try to make sure that you're evaluating, clearly evaluating whether something's going to work or not?
Well, what you evaluate is dependent upon what the needs are that you identified. So as I walk you down the different levels of needs of what the executives want at the payoff and the business need area, then we take a look at the performance needs within the workplace, then the learning needs, and then the reaction needs, how we want people to react to the course. Then what we do is we define is, okay, this is the current state. What do we want the program to improve? How much and by when? So we look at, well, how do we want people to react to this course? And someone could say, well, we typically do a 5-point Likert scale, and we want to see an average 4.0 out of a 5.0 Likert scale on the different things that are important. Okay, so what we'll do is when we collect the data at the end of the course, we'll say, did we achieve that 4.0 out of a 5.0 Likert scale? If we didn't, let's take a look at the course. If we did, that seems good. Learning, did they learn it? Typical things that we do with learning. So we have tests, assessments, practice exercises, those things. Did they learn it? And then when we get to the application level, where are they applying what they learned in the workplace? Then we're going to go out and determine, well, what do we want to see them doing differently in the workplace? So we go out and we evaluate, are they doing this when nobody's watching? Is it a part of their daily practices? And then what we do from that is, what's the consequences of them changing the practices? If they say that we want to improve, let's say we want to improve quality by 20%, that's our objective. When do you want to see it by? We like to see it in 6 months. So at the 6-month point, we'll go out and say, okay, did we improve quality by 20% at the 6-month point? And then finally, we calculate the ROI. Did we achieve the positive ROI objective that they wanted to see? So our evaluation is driven by answering the questions, did we achieve the objectives that are rooted in the needs?
And when you look at the data, you mentioned the Likert scale reports is kind of a key thing. You want to be a 4 out of 5 on the scale. Are you also able to look at qualitative data at that time, or is it simply too overwhelming?
Yes.
Are there things you can get out of that as well?
No, you can look at qualitative data. It's very important because we want to have both qual and qual as we're going through this, because the qualitative data can give us some indicators about things that we didn't think about asking about. And we got to keep in mind, when we're dealing with the qualitative data, when people make responses, we typically only hear from 2 types of individuals who go through the course: the disgruntled and the gruntled, right?
Yep.
So a lot of times we miss the people in the middle. Therefore, that's where we want to get the instructors who are in the classroom to be listening and having conversations with people, and maybe capturing some of those to report as well.
Great. Are there some techniques you recommend to be able to do that in a way where you do get, you do capture data that's, again, sort of the candid kind of data that you're really hoping to get?
Again, it goes back to the trust issue. And also making sure that you give people enough time at the end of the course to write those down, and also encourage them to be writing these things down as they're going through the course. Waiting until the very end is, a lot of times people just want to get out of there. But if you design time into the course where you're saying, okay, what I want you to write down, this is something I do in a lot of my training programs, is I want you to write down after a session, write down three to 5 of the most important things that you learned during this course. And what are questions that you still have or unresolved, or is there something that we can do better? And then when they get to the end of the course, when you're asking, they've got all these things already written down. And a lot of times you can just have them turn them in with no names on it.
Great. So I'm guessing that you would find anonymous is better in this case, because
absolutely. It's got to be anonymous. Yeah. It'll never be anonymous, but it'll be anonymous.
Okay. Yes, exactly. Okay, let me take things one slightly different direction. So if, we've talked about what the perspective is from your view and from your company. If you're, an in-house learning development professional at an organization, even perhaps at a university, are there some, what are a few takeaways you could provide, a few tips that people might be able to use to just make sure that they are keeping an eye on return on investment, early on in the design stage of any initiative?
Absolutely. Well, the first thing we have to understand when we go into that is that not every program should be evaluated to the ROI or the impact level. What we look for is programs that are strategic, they're important to achieve organizational objectives, they're costly, and also do they have senior management attention? And there's some other ones that we have based upon benchmarking studies that we've done out there of what do organizations, executives and organizations look for when they decide to go to those higher levels. So making sure that you're going to the appropriate level. Like if you have a compliance program, you're not going to evaluate to the ROI. You got to do it anyway. So just evaluate it, did they learn it and did they like it type of thing. If you have a safety issue that you're trying to overcome, people are hurting themselves in the workplace. Well, we'll definitely want to evaluate to that level to say, have we reduced that? Have we fixed that problem? So going into the evaluation is, first of all, knowing, is it proper to evaluate to a certain level? The other most important thing to do is when you're asked to design a course is ask, why am I designing this course? What problem is it trying to fix? When senior management makes a decision of, was this course a worthwhile investment or not? What's the criteria they're going to use? Because if I don't know the criteria they're going to use, what impact measures do they want to improve? Then I don't know what people have to learn in the workplace to be able to improve their behaviors to affect those measures. So I'm making it up. That's where a lot of programs fail, is a lot of times we're asked to do a program out there and we're just kind of coming up with a course. I remember I was working in one organization, they were asked to develop a leadership development course. Okay, that's great. And what the instructional designer did was went out and bought a book on leadership and wrote a course around that. I'm going, well, why do they want a leadership course? Problems have they? What caused them to want to have this leadership course? Don't you think you want to find out what that is, so that when you're using your examples or you're using case studies, it's related to the behaviors that we want to see them apply these leadership skills to? No, they just want a leadership course, generic leadership course. Okay. We'll see what happens when they're looking at places to cut the budget.
Right. So almost to sum it up in a certain sense, it always it comes down to remembering what the goals are and making sure that everything you do is in service of the goals from the beginning, from the design process all the way through the evaluation, making sure that you always have your eye on what the end goal is and why you're doing this in the first place.
Yeah, and it's understanding what our role is. I mean, a lot of times we think of ourselves as instructional designers, learning professionals, and our focus is on learning. But learning is a means to an end. If we are about improving human behaviors, human performance in the workplace to improve organizational performance, we have to understand what the organizational performance is that the organization wants to improve, that they're giving us money to improve before we can design our learning programs. Otherwise, we're not aligned and we're subject to being cut in budget cuts out there because we're not showing value. So it's really important for us to know the why and to make sure that when we create a solution, it's a feasible solution aligned to address those business needs and achieve those business objectives that management wants.
Absolutely. Basically, one last question. As we've seen a lot of technological advances coming in recent years, becoming more mainstream, intelligent analytics, a lot of other things. Are there roles that you see for that kind of technology in your work and in the work of creating the best, a program with the best ROI and being able to evaluate it? So how do you see those contributing to improved course design and improved evaluation, maybe over the next several years?
Sure. A lot of this technology, artificial intelligence and all these different things out there are put in place to improve organizational productivity. And the way they do that is try to make people more productive. Well, we can take a look at if they implement a certain program that uses AI, we want to look at, well, what are the business measures that they wanted to improve? What behaviors in the workplace that they want to improve? What do people have to learn to use this AI properly and react to a positive that's not going to take their job away from them? And they go out in the workplace, they like it, they learn it, they're doing it out there. Did this AI solution actually improve those measures that management expected it to improve? Or did it cause the employees to be looking over the shoulder, wondering when they're going to come by their office with a box and saying, "You've been replaced by ET"?
Yeah, no one wants to hear that. That's really something nobody wants. Nobody wants to hear that.
No, ET's at the door saying, "Go home."
Right. Only thing worse than that is a robot that looks exactly like you. I think that would actually be worse. All right. Before, as we wrap up, anything else? Any other tips and techniques you want to leave sort of for our audience? Just a few key things that they may want to think about. Again, we've covered so much during this time, but as they look at best ways to evaluate and really make sure they have a strong ROI on any program they design.
I think the best thing you can do is to reassess how we define ourselves in the organization. Rather than confining ourselves to we're about learning, no, we're about performing human performance to improve organizational performance. We are the keys to finding out what's really happening in the workplace, to understand what it is that people have to do to improve their workplace behaviors, to improve organizational performance measures. So we want to be seen as business partners with a focus on the bottom line, the ROI and the impact measures that the organization and the executives are zeroing in on. That's what they manage and they monitor. And if we're not showing how we're adding value to contribute to that, then what value are we bringing to the organization? So it's all about value and understanding that value is in the eye of the beholder. Value is also important for the stakeholders in the workplace. So we just have to understand value and how we are contributing to the organization. What we do is we help organizations, okay? We help them see and show the value of what they do to drive the business. That's the bottom line of what we're about. When we evaluate the programs, we help them see and show the value of our learning programs that helps them drive the business.
Great. Well, value is a great takeaway to end this on. Tim, thanks so much for your time. I very much enjoyed it. It was a pleasure talking with you, and really appreciate your taking the time to walk through this with us. You're doing a lot of interesting work, and really, of course, see the value in all of your discussions about value. So thanks once again.
My delight, David. Thanks so much.